All right, here we are at another episode of the Kink Tank, starting a little bit late tonight. Sorry for the delay for any of the viewers that we already have in here. But this episode, we are going to be talking about respect in the community. And what I mean here is not necessarily respect between two individual people. I mean, like in relationships, because we hear a lot about that when we're talking about, showing respect to people that you're in a power dynamic with. What I'm talking about are community dynamics and respect. And when people say that you should respect that person or you owe them respect or people respect you, I mean, I want to talk a little bit about that. What do they mean? How do you get it? How do you lose it? Um, all of those things in the community, and I'm talking about sort of the in-person community where we're sort of face to face more often than online with each other.
Mhm.
So when they say respect, you should respect that person or that person deserves your respect or someone respects you, what does that mean?
I think in the community, because it's so small, and because everybody knows everybody, typically speaking, I mean, any kink community is just smaller than a lot of other communities. Everyone tends to know everybody, I think, in most places, but especially in smaller ones. And so respect matters a lot, especially in a tradition of like handing down information or sharing expertise with each other. So, in my opinion, when someone says that they respect you, they would listen to what you have to say on subjects. They may learn from you, feel very comfortable learning whatever from you, relationship strategies, play strategies, just generally how you, ape how you handle yourself around other people. I think people tend to view respect in certain parts of the kink community as um, like respect your elders kind of a thing, like respect the trailblazers, respect the people who've been around. There tends to be kind of a like a I don't know what you call that, like a tradition of it's very old school kind of way of earning and keeping respect, I think.
Right. And I don't disagree. I mean, I want to talk a little bit about that idea of, respecting elders or respecting, people who came before you, trailblazers and so forth. But the problem that I have with the word respect, and this applies not just to the BDSM community, but in general, it's a lot like the word trust for me. If somebody says, "Don't you trust me?" Well, I trust you to be on time, and I trust you to not kill me when we're in a scene, but I don't necessarily trust you to babysit my kids. There are like different things. Trust is not an all-encompassing thing where you either trust somebody or you don't trust somebody. There are different areas that trust can be focused. And being specific in your negotiations and in your relationships, I think it's helpful to define where that trust is. Respect is very similar to that for me, and that is I might respect the fact that you are a very knowledgeable person, but I don't respect you as a person. Like I think you're a dick, okay? But I respect the fact that you have a lot more knowledge in a certain area than I do, or there are certain ways that you can show respect to people in for certain facets of that, but it's not a you either respect somebody or you don't. Does that make sense? Is
Yeah,
that
I think so.
Do you feel that way? I mean, why do we lump all of this into one word? Like, you need to show some respect. Well, what does that mean? Does that mean giving up my chair for you, or does that mean being nice? Does that mean acknowledging the fact that they are, you know, superior to me in some way? What do they what do they mean? It all seems to be bundled up into one word, and it needs to be separated out.
Well, it's kind of like when you tell someone you love them. The way that I say I love you to my mother is different than the way I say I love you to you or to my neighbor, or it's one of those words that maybe you wish you had something more specific, but it's kind
Do
of
you
all
love
encompassing.
me like you love chocolate, or do you love
Right.
me like
Or do you
you?
just love me like the way that you say love you to like people that you actually don't like very much? There's a
Right.
whole spectrum that's totally involved with respect. And so here's my thing with respect. I don't mind there being one word the same as I don't mind there being one I love you, but I tend to be the kind of person who will explain it. So
Hmm.
I don't respect. So I tend to expect people to earn my respect. I will treat everybody nicely when I meet them with, a high level of, courtesy. But that's not the same as respect. I tend to want people to kind of earn that by their, way that they interact with people, just kind of making themselves, I don't know, a person of integrity. That, like, I respect people with integrity. I respect people who have, you know, accomplishments that I admire, that kind of thing. I don't typically default respect. So I think there's more than one camp in the community. Some people think you should respect people because they've been around a long time, or because they are good at something, um, or because they're older, like just simply by age. They could be pretty new, but they're older. And then there's that other side, which I tend to fall on, which is I respect you for specific things and specific reasons. Because I think you should. I take respect very seriously. When someone tells me that I have earned their respect, I think that's very flattering. But you can't just give it out to everybody because that kind of cheapens it, I think. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, I agree. And am I alone in this idea? I mean, it seems to me like I lose respect for people who expect respect from me, I guess.
yes.
And it's kind of counterproductive. It seems like, the folks who bang the drum of respect. You should respect me. You should respect this person. I respect who I fucking respect. It just happens. It's not like I try or, or try not to. But if you think that I owe you something, or if you think that you've earned something from me when you haven't, I've lost some respect for you because it seems like, the people that I respect most don't really care whether I respect them or not.
Right.
And I don't know what that is, like what mechanism that is for me. I guess what I respect, part of what I respect in people is a certain sense of humility.
Yeah.
And people that expect respect don't seem very humble to me.
Yeah. Yeah. I
And
mean, a sense of entitlement is not humble, and it's not attractive most of the time. It doesn't make you want to have a conversation with the person, let alone go out of your way to make sure that they know that you respect them.
right. And the whole basis of this conversation just kind of sprung up. I was watching a Facebook. There was something in my Facebook feed, and it was about the gay community. And there was this handsome guy sitting there, basically started off, calling out the sort of pretty boy gay culture in the clubs. And that was, so while you're over there, laughing with your people about that, hairy, tubby old guy that nobody wants to fuck, right? That you don't want to have anything to do with. He's like creeper, weirdo, whatever. That guy was there. He blazed the trail for you. He has earned your respect, and you're basically being a dick by laughing at this person who is now affording you the privilege that you have today of, first of all, a gay club being out in the open, for one, and not being burned to the ground or having people picketing outside or have to worry and look over your shoulder all the time about somebody coming to bash you. That you owe this person something, this complete stranger that you've never met. And I understand the sentiment behind that.
Sure.
There's more to that person than you can see. And he was basically saying, don't be so shallow that you can't see that. Um, but I don't know. It kind of rubbed me the wrong way. Like, yeah, I feel you. Like that feels right, but I don't know that it's true. And if I don't know that person, and that person, may have been at Stonewall and started the whole thing, um, I don't know that that means that I personally owe them something. I mean, it depends on how much I value that and what I think that that means to me. Um, so let's talk a little bit about that. Let's talk about this idea of trailblazing, because you get that sometimes in the community. You don't get a whole lot of people sitting around, leaning back like, well, if it weren't for me, we wouldn't be having munches in public restaurants because I was there at the riot of 1979 and made this all possible for you. You're welcome. We don't have any of those people because we never really fought that fight.
Mm.
But there are people who created communities. There are people who created good things that other people now have and use. Um, are those people entitled to some respect? Are they entitled to that just without having met the person?
I I think they are entitled to personally my gratitude because I am grateful that they because I'm directly affected by those actions. And I do have gratitude for them. But I think that for you to I don't think you're automatically qualified to blanket respect forever because you did one spectacularly great deed.
In
Um,
1979.
in 1979 because that person can in the present day be a terrible community member. They can alienate people. They can be a personally a dick to me, and I don't think that that overrides this other criteria that you typically would have for giving or receiving respect from another person. I think you have to constantly. It's like any other kind of relationship. You're constantly either earning it or not earning it. It's not static like that. Like you got the badge of respect and now you get it forever, regardless of anything that you do. Um, but certainly gratitude, I think, is to be had. I think it's polite, if that person is around to, acknowledge that when it's appropriate. But there's really nothing more annoying than the person who does something like that and then just holds it over you all the time, bringing
Right.
it up all the time, doesn't do anything else. This is one thing. It's like your one uncle who talks about like the one time he like tried to
The
qualify
one
for the
time, the
Olympics
one
20 years
time he,
ago.
the one time he was a backup singer for David Bowie. It's
Right.
like
And you're like, "Oh, not this again. Not this
shit.
again." Like I'm excited that you did it, but there's like a statute there that it becomes, I think, in poor taste to just keep bringing
Right.
it up.
Yeah, and I feel that is a mistake that I've seen a few old timers make, and I put myself in that category of old timer. This idea that there comes a time when you've arrived. You've paid your dues, you've done your thing, and now you can sit on your laurels and get what's owed back to you in the form of respect or favor or some sort of privilege in the community. That's not something that ever stops getting earned. and
May
and I,
I say something real
yes,
quick
please.
on that topic? Um, I think it's funny that you mentioned that because that's actually something I was discussing with a friend the other day when I was talking about how the old timers, which I even include myself in that because I've been in the community almost 10 plus years now. Um, it's funny because they complain about the young timers and then the young timers complain about the old timers not giving each other respect. And there's always this constant little battle of old BDSM and new BDSM and how it doesn't work and blah 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 blah. But I think that there would be more respect if the old timers knew that the new timers can't learn things unless they're actually getting up off their laurels, as you say, and teaching them. So I think a lot of the respect needs to come in the form of new timers understanding that they need to be taught so that the old timers can respect them, and then new timers respecting the old timers for doing what they should be doing and bringing the newer generation in. So I think there's a lot of understanding to be had between everybody in the scene, that everybody is constantly learning, and to have respect, I think we need to understand that guidance comes into play with trust a lot of times.
Yeah, and that's an ages old thing that's been happening in civilization since the beginning of it. And that is the new generation just doesn't get it. It's not like
Mm.
the old days. I bet you Caesar was sitting around saying that about his kids, just like they just, they want me to hand everything to them on a platter. In my day, we worked, we conquered Gaul, we got off our butts and we did it ourselves. I'm talking about, when Elvis came out and that was all like devil music and, kids and society going into a handbasket to hell. That happens every single generation, and this
Yeah,
is no different. And it's a sentiment that is a little bit like, it's obviously resistant to change if things have changed. And I do feel, Cupcake, you probably realize since you've got 10 years plus, or Josie, you've got 5, 6, something like that. The community has changed in the time that you guys have been in it. Um,
absolutely. Even just
and
the Louisville community since I've been here, and I've only been here about a year, and it's changed exponentially
right, so
since the time I've been here.
there's a resistance to that, and I've noticed that. And I don't want to get too far off the rails here, but somebody had told me that they had come to some events about 12 years ago or so, and they really didn't feel like it was for them. And then they met somebody online who was participating in our community, who then convinced them to come out again. And they were like, been there, done that. It wasn't for me. I didn't like it, whatever. And they came back and they found a much different place, a much more comfortable place. Um, and it's a certain resistance to change. Like I know there are a lot of old timers that would not like what this community has turned into, and that's why we don't see them anymore. Um, and I do think that one of the things that has changed in our community, and I don't know, maybe this is a Louisville thing, maybe it's an Ohio Valley thing, maybe it's a nationwide or worldwide thing. I don't really know, but there seems to be more emphasis on merit, I guess. More the idea of earned respect or continually earning respect than this idea of respect because of your gender or your power orientation or your experience or time in the community, etc. Do you guys agree, disagree?
Oh yeah, I totally agree with that. It goes by like a vetting system. If some of the people in your primary group don't know this person, we tend to put them in this category of, oh, I don't trust that person. No one I know has played with them. And that's totally cool, and I totally understand that. But I think each individual person comes with their own stuff. And the more that I've jumped out there as a single person going to parties, and I understand people go to parties with their partners most of the time, but as a single person going to parties to find play and stuff, I've realized that you really have to take merit in your own hands and talk to people. Yeah, it's good to have that background in the vetting to know that they are safe. Like you do want to make sure people are safe. But I think that trust and merit need to come from yourself and that person. I don't think that another person should be able to tell you to trust or not trust someone.
Right. Or maybe they've earned the respect of other people, or maybe
Yeah.
they've earned the respect of an entire community before with their deeds. That doesn't mean that they've earned yours.
No, and it may not, they may have earned the respect of the community, but what someone does in front of people's eyes can be completely different than what they do with one person or by themselves. This person could be, you see it constantly nowadays. There are these great leaders, and then behind doors, they're having affairs, they're cheating, they're drug smuggling. So you never know. Like it's something that you need to take with a grain of salt, that you need to figure out for yourself.
Hmm. Well, what if you came into an event as a, let's say, a person that's been in a particular community for a year, and somebody comes in and you don't know that person from Adam, and I'm saying, oh no, that's so and so. They started the first leather patch club in town, or the first leather bar, or the first munch group that was there, or the first dungeon. Um, you know that person has been around, has participated, has given of themselves to the community. How does that change the way that you treat them? Now, Josie, you were saying they'll have my gratitude, but that is not to be, mistaken for some kind of respect. But do you agree that you probably would maybe treat that person a little bit differently?
I think would until that person gave me a reason not to, probably. Because for me, that just falls under a certain, I don't know, it seems polite. If the majority of people are telling me one thing about a person, I tend to default closer in that direction. Um,
So until they say to you, "Don't you know who I am?"
yeah, and then it drops from like the top to the bottom once you've done that. Because I do think you have to keep earning it. But yeah, I think that but I do have to say, for that specific, context, one of the reasons why I'm defaulting to respect is because people I respect you. So I tend to just kind of assume that those people who have earned that from me, I will probably agree with.
Hmm.
But I do reserve the right to revoke that at any point, whenever I want. I also think that, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. What bad comes from defaulting to a more respectful position? I don't think that person should expect it. That always becomes a sticking point for me. That you meet them and you say, "Oh, hello," and you go to shake their hand and they're like, "Whoa, show some respect, give me some space, like
Kiss the
bow
ring.
your head, kiss the ring, that kind of thing." No, I just don't believe in that. And I know that a lot of people in leather communities disagree. I think there's a lot of hierarchy of respect based on earned title or, having started a club or having started a patch family or something like that, even
Or
based on
yeah,
orientation.
But
longevity.
that also goes with the culture, like understanding the culture that you're in. Like in Japan, they all have the business card things. Like
Sure,
it's knowing your culture and what you're walking into as well.
that's
So
a
it
great
would
point.
be a different thing.
Yeah, because
Sure,
in other
absolutely.
parts of the world, as Americans, we seem to have lost this sort of, instant respect for your elders. This idea of like older people are wiser, or maybe they fought in World War II and earned 3 Purple Hearts, and whatever their story is, that older people, the granny crossing the street, the person who, there are people that you see photos of in civil rights movements, and you're like, oh, they were there, they were doing it, and I can, if they haven't done anything since and they're generally a lousy person, I'm still not going to respect them very much. But I know that it's different in other parts of the world where that elder respect is much more pronounced. Um, and so I would probably come across as a big asshat in those places, because when the older person gets on the full bus and I don't give up my chair, that's some kind of, respect that's expected of people. So when you're in leather circles, there is a different culture of this. And, they say it's rooted in the old clubs of, sort of starting at the bottom, working your way to the top through deeds, through sexual prowess, through, however you earn your way up through from boy to master, to supreme grandmaster, to, you know, through the echelons anyways. And we in the pansexual community have a different culture about that, at least these days. It was a little less like that, 10 years ago, but these days, and it chaps the ass of the old folks. It does. Like you were saying, Cupcake, it's like whippersnappers, instant dom. They got FetLife. We didn't have FetLife. Now they can just go on there and make a profile and put master on it. And what a joke that is. And back in my day, we had to earn that. Why? What? No. What did you do to earn that? You called yourself master and had somebody who was willing to call you master, and you became master so and so. Nobody liked you then, and they still don't like you now. So is it any different, really? I mean, the cultures are a little bit different there. I agree with pansexual munch group sort of communities and leather communities. Agreed?
Oh yeah, definitely.
And do you think that it's I happen to think that it's that culture in leather that attracts some people to it.
Definitely.
Oh, I totally agree because I love the leather community. It's something that I'm very drawn to, but it also is not just about that. It's also about the protocols and the structure that I find interesting and that I actually really enjoy.
Right. In that there are, sort of understood or maybe expected protocols amongst, just amongst your peers and people that
Yeah.
you're not in a personal power exchange relationship with, as opposed to the pansexual community where we kind of feel like, well, that's between you two, you know,
Yeah.
you guys do that, but that doesn't mean that, you know, that somebody comes into the pansexual community as a bottom or as a submissive and is expected to defer to people, other people, or to serve them in some kind of way or
Yeah.
anything like that. Where I do kind of think that, there's an idea of hierarchy or pecking order in the leather community that's very attractive to people. And
Oh
either
yeah.
it's because that structure is comforting, or that, let's say, respect hierarchy is comforting because you kind of know the pecking order, the totem pole, um, or
Well, it
maybe
really
it's
simplifies things too.
Mhm.
You don't really have to go through this like there's no confusion. If that person walks in there wearing their master's cover, they have your respect immediately, and typically they keep it because you know that it's the expectation that you will respect this person, and that makes the symbolism of it makes it super super easy. It's not just that you have to figure out their name; they're wearing something on their person. That indicates that you will show them respect, and it does make it a little more simple. It does make it like ceremonial respect. Like it's kind of interesting to look at. The thing that always makes me a little worried about that is that it tends to be kind of a carte blanche for bad behavior, because if you walk in with your cover and people automatically respect you, you don't have to keep earning that respect. You can act like an asshole and most people will still respect you. It's kind of remarkable. You can
Well,
be an
I
unkind person.
yeah, no, and I totally get that side of things, but being from that community a little bit and knowing a little bit more in a little bit more of it, maybe. I don't know how much you know. But I can say that a submissive wearing cover to their master or a slave wearing cover, most of the time they're not going to act like that though, because as the pecking order goes, they're going to get called out really quickly. And those people will lose respect for them. And but the other thing that it affects is in the leather community, not only do they lose respect for that submissive, but also for the master that owns them because they should be behaving better than that. So there's a lot more to just the hierarchy of things. It affects, like, respect is the biggest thing in that community, but it can be affected very, very simply, especially when it comes down to an owned slave misbehaving.
and I think that's what I'm sort of leather community adjacent and have been for some time. I don't consider myself a leather person, um, but that I think that's one of the things that I dislike about it, and that is the sort of whether it's the codified etiquette
Mm-hmm.
between people, or the idea of communal respect being assigned to people. Like it's not just it's not left to individuals and their interpersonal relationships, whether I respect your contribution to this community, or I respect your um, integrity as a person, or I respect your skills with toys and the way that you handle your slave. Those are all different kinds of respect, and I can choose to give one or two of those to you and withhold the others until I either know more or you prove me differently. But the idea of we agree that this person is worthy of respect. Well, you agree. I don't know if I agree, and
Yeah.
it's hard for me to to swim in that water, I guess.
And it's not for everybody.
Right. It's attractive to some folks, and that I certainly understand that. Whether it's
Kind of
because
like your kink is your kink, what's my kink is my kink.
right,
I
and it's
think.
it's attractive to some because of the structure or because of the apparent, you know where you are on the pecking order and the totem pole. Um, but also it may be because that's what they aspire to. There is a clear path, whether it's you know earning leather or becoming a Patch Club member, or just being around and doing good things, and someday being at the top of that pecking order. Like that's something that they strive for and something that they want to become. But I don't think that anybody, I mean, I still stick by the idea that you can't ever stop earning it. You when you decide that you're either going to not participate or do nothing really that contributes to the community, and sort of put it on cruise control. Don't you know what I've done? I did this and that, and you're only here because I blazed the trail for you, etc. That's great. What have you done for me lately? What have you done that's constructive in this community, and what have you done to continue earning my respect? That's more the way that I look at it, and I think that's something that's probably more compatible with the pansexual kink community, and that's why I'm a bigger part of that.
Yeah, and I think too the other aspect of respect within community that I find to be interesting that I have kind of thought about is that I can respect somebody and not like them.
Hmm.
And I think that's an important distinction. I kind of it makes me feel better when that happens because what I don't like is when people say like show some respect, like the example that you were giving of that Twinkie guy who who wasn't attracted to that other person, show some respect. Well, I can have gratitude. I can even respect that person for their advocacy or whatever, but not want to fuck them or even be friends with them because I don't like them as a person. In my mind, respect is admiration on a pretty deep level. It's deference on a more than just surface level. I can respect you as a player, as a toy maker, as a just a really capable, in my opinion, bottom or really capable of doing power exchange relationships, and think you're an asshole.
Yeah.
I
I
totally
respect
agree.
you. I respect you as a pony trainer, but not a husband. You're a fucking lousy husband, but you're an
Yeah.
awesome, someone that I look up to when it comes to, this particular kind of play or something.
Yeah,
I
but I
totally agree.
might not want to be your friend. I might not want to hang out, and that might be the reason why I'm not giving up my seat for you because I don't want you to sit by me. But if somebody asks me, I might still tell them like, hey, I really respect him for his ability to do this. Like I'll be more specific about it. That's the way that I've gotten around some of that because I do feel like you should give respect where it's due. I know that it feels really nice when someone tells you that you've earned it from them. I like to give that, pay that forward back to other people. Like when you've earned it. But I think it's okay to draw some boundaries around respect and love, like appreciate.
What about power orientation um, as a criteria for respect? Um, I think kind of going back to the old days, it would have been considered pretty strange or out of place for a more submissive identified or bottom leaning person to be sassy with someone like me, and kind of like know your place, like back it up. And I've always objected to that. I don't see it a whole lot anymore. But do you think in interpersonal relationships, I think that that's a mistake sometimes that people make as well. Like, okay, we've agreed that we're going to have this power exchange, and I'm going to be the big letter person, you're going to be the little letter person, you're going to, do what I say, whatever. I mean, what have you really earned by that point? You know, maybe quite a bit. It depends on the pace that you do these things at. It depends on your experience with that person. But, this idea of like, you can't sass your dominant because they're the dominant. Like, you're being disrespectful. And certainly if you are sassy to someone else's dominant, you are a disrespectful submissive. You are or if I talk to your submissive that I'm being disrespectful to you. What I mean, that sounds like a bunch of bullshit to me. And I'm glad things work a little bit differently these days, but you still see it. And what's the mechanics of that? What's really at play there?
What do you mean? What's at
Okay,
play there?
so if I'm at a party and I go up to somebody and maybe I understand that they're attached to somebody, maybe I have no idea that they're attached to somebody, and I ask them if they want to play or I flirt with them or something like that, and their dominant takes umbrage to that, that I'm being disrespectful to them. What are they really saying? Because I'm not really being disrespectful. I'm talking to a person,
Right.
and so they're saying I'm not playing by the rules. I'm not playing by their rules.
Yeah, I mean it is kind of a fantasy game at that point, and which for a lot of people is like part of it.
So
So
for some
when
people, it's
you
damn near all of it. But
absolutely, like if you're gonna go into this space, like this is what you can expect, and that's hot, or that's interesting, or that's probably hot and fun and interesting to that person. I think unless those are the rules, specifically defined rules of your group, I get the hotness of that. That can be fun. It's like role play, but you have to all agree to play by the same rules, or else I think it just makes you look like a giant asshole. 'Cause if I don't know those are the rules, and then I walk up and I'm like, "Oh, hey, I see that you're reaching over there. Could you pass me that?" And you're like, "What are you doing? I am a top. You are not allowed to speak to me that way." And I'm like, "Oh, sorry. I didn't mean to ruin it for you. I didn't mean to." If I don't know the rules, how am I supposed to engage? I think it tends to set people up for failure, and in at least in my world, it tends to make it a little less fun for me. Because then it takes away my ability to get to know that person. Because then, like, I can't talk to you because I'm worried that I'm not allowed to talk to you because I'm a bottom and you're a super dominant, and I'm not. Am I supposed to wait? Should Are you gonna approach me? Like, I just don't have time for that. And it does take away my fun. I want to get to know somebody, and I think that it cheapens your power exchange dynamic. If I meet you and you tell me that you're a dominant male, and then I like drop to my knees and I'm like, great, let's do this. It doesn't mean anything to any of the other people that I serve. You know what I mean? Like if I can't if I don't get to know you as a person before I submit to you or before I just kind of default to that level of respect, it doesn't mean anything. If you treat everybody with that, it doesn't hold any currency anymore. And I think it does mean something. It means a lot to me when someone respects me or when I can respect them. But you have to let me figure out if I want to.
Mhm. I think it comes from just a very sort of insecure place. That's the way it seems to me. If I go to somebody and say, like I had somebody actually come to me at a play party and said, um, I don't want to be an asshole, but is it okay? Like, would it be cool with you, or I would appreciate if you didn't hug my girl? And I'm a huggy person, and I hug and greet, and sometimes I do, maybe overstep or get inside somebody's boundaries and maybe they're uncomfortable with that. And I didn't realize that she was uncomfortable with that. In fact, I'm not sure that she was uncomfortable with that. He seemed to be saying to me, I don't really mind that you're hugging her, actually. What I don't want is for everybody else in this dungeon space to feel like they can, you
Right.
know, that that's they don't want to like make it open season or just give people the idea that that's the boundaries that she has. And for people that are like real sticklers about this kind of thing, like, well, don't speak to her, you speak to me, because that's how this works, this power dynamic. That's how it's supposed to work, is when it starts getting problematic, or when it I think it comes from an insecure place where, like, I don't know, there's something that they're afraid, like, I'm gonna club their woman over the head and drag them off to my cave, steal them away from them. Well, what? What's the harm in me talking to this person? And I understand it might ruin the illusion of their power dynamic, or even if it's not an illusion, if it's a genuine power dynamic, that I'm screwing it up. But I can't know that. I'm not disrespecting you.
But I can
Well,
see that's one of those examples like where I can think your rule is stupid. I can think that it's totally stupid that you think that people should ask permission to talk to your person. Like some people do that. Like, don't be disrespectful. Ask me before you say anything to her. I can think that's stupid, but if you're telling me those are the rules that you would like for me to abide by, I can respect you for that. I can respect your rule. I can respect you as a person for at least having articulated those rules and still think your rule is stupid, which I also like. Like, I don't understand it completely. I don't see why it steals your fire, but I respect that you just told me that, and I can play by those rules as long as it doesn't inconvenience me greatly.
Right. And I kind of feel like I didn't I didn't disrespect you, but now that you've told me how you want it and how you guys do things,
Yeah.
now if I do it, I'm being kind of disrespectful.
Yes.
I've decided not to respect your rules that you have laid out for your relationship and your interactions with your people. Now that I know this, then I can make a decision. And then I, I I think that is the case. I'm not going to hug this woman. I'm not going to be like, "Oh, don't be silly. We're huggy here. This is what we do. What's the big deal? What's the harm?" I was like, "Hey, man, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to overstep. I will not do that again." But that's that's respecting someone's boundaries, not necessarily respecting the person.
If I
I,
may,
please.
um, as someone who likes those type of things, um, I find it a little bit bothersome that it's being laughed at a little bit or scoffed at, or and I totally understand people can have their own feelings and say, like Josie said, hey, that's really stupid. But that's kind of like someone coming off and saying something about something you really, really love and is saying publicly, laughing at it and saying, I don't understand, or that really is just dumb. I don't get it. People are idiotic. Why do they have to believe in that?
Oh no, that's not at all what
So,
I'm saying. I'm saying that that's
but
not my
what
kink,
I'm
but
saying,
I respect someone's decision to do it.
if I may finish, what I'm saying is let's just be careful about how we approach things, especially since I know that people can get iffy. Like, you guys don't offend me or anything, but playing the devil's advocate side of things, just so there's another side to the discussion, it it can come off seeming like that. And I think in a community, we need to be a bit careful about how we're discussing things, and being aware that there are other people who like things that we may not like, and understanding that if we say something is stupid about someone else, how does that make them feel? Like, how does it make them feel about the community? Um, I think that's something that also goes along with respect, is we should respect, I don't care what anybody says, we should respect everybody's likes,
Okay.
because that is them, that's who they are.
And I think the what's happening here is that Josie, if I'm correct me if I'm wrong, even if I think that's stupid, which I may or may not, but I think what she was saying was I may think it's stupid, but I'm still going to respect it. Like whether I'm into that
Yeah,
kink, whether I like it or recognize it or anything, it's certainly not something you would say to say, well, I think that's stupid, but I'm gonna,
No, never.
respect your wishes anyways.
Right.
And
and
when we're
I get
talking
that.
about things on the Kink Tank too, I mean, I understand if you felt like Josie thought like was saying that that type of protocol is stupid. I don't think that's what she was saying.
No, 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 and I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that as something that gets publicly recorded and posted, especially because it's a discussion, I'm simply playing like the devil's advocate side of things, so that things can be explained fully from a different side, because it did border a little bit on the leather discussion that we were having. It did get a little bit into the portions of some of the things were being laughed at a little bit, and scoffed at, which I totally get that that's not what y'all meant. But I think sometimes just being more conscious of the way that we're discussing things.
All right. I do think, to sort of continue along that line, in Josie's example, when she's saying, if that's the way you want, like basically not knowing your rules, and I go and overstep these rules that I didn't know that you had in place or that you were there. I guess my point to this is that I'm not being disrespectful at that point. And in fact, if you're going to overreact to that or expect me to know your etiquette or your protocols, because in the pansexual community we have not agreed upon these things with each other. It's a different culture where these things are sort of decided interpersonally between individuals. I can't know that. So if you're the one who says to me, you're disrespecting me by not playing by my rules, then I feel like I'm being disrespected at that point. You know, like
And
I
I agree with that. I totally do because it's all about communication.
and after you tell me that, like this guy did, and he did it in a really nice way. It was kind of perfect. He was like, I'd rather you didn't do that. It wasn't like, how dare you? It was, please don't do that. All right, I'm sorry. And I apologized and said the word sorry, and it won't happen again. So it worked out really well, and I don't think I didn't lose any respect for him. He didn't lose any respect for me. Everything's on track. We communicated very well. Um, but I do think that there is a little bit of that, and maybe a little bit more online. You see that on people's profiles a lot. The idea of, don't friend me unless you've talked to my person. Okay, you said it. I know that now, so I can choose to respect that or not respect it.
Sure. So respect is like, it's how you interact with people, but it's also it's playing by their rules when those rules don't infringe greatly upon the ones that you keep for yourself typically. And that's kind of unique to the community, I think. Not a lot of normal everyday interactions are based on predetermined power exchange or unique relationships that are negotiated between other people, and it can be a challenging aspect of negotiating respect in the community, this kind of thing, like hugging the person and then realizing you weren't supposed to do that, or messaging the person and realizing you weren't supposed to do that. um, I I think it can be hard sometimes to navigate it. It's a unique challenge, I think.
But it is something that, collectively as a community, I think most people can, in our community, you can look at some people and say they are a respected person or they are not a respected person. There is a little bit of, sort of collective feeling about that, but that's basically just the sum of the individual's perceptions of that person, their dealings with that person. Um, it's not an agreed upon thing, where um, if you go into a different circle, for instance, and you go to the grand poobah guy, the one who's like at the head table, and you call him dude, is that me being disrespectful? I don't know. You know, uh, it depends on the culture that you're in, I suppose, and knowing what the expectations are for that.
Yeah, and the stakes are higher too for that. Maybe typically speaking, you wouldn't be hyper concerned or hyper alert to that sort of thing. But in a community that's smaller, in a community that has a more acute understanding of these exchanges, I think that probably would, if you know that person is going to respond negatively, don't do it. I would err personally on the side of respect instead of something that could potentially be construed as disrespect, like calling him dude or like giving him a high five or whatever. Just because in a community it does tend to be more sensitive than somewhere else. And I don't see any problem with erring on the side of respect. Maybe they haven't yet earned it, but if I get the sense they're the kind of person who it's going to matter to, I'd
Mhm.
rather be respectful than
Yeah, I won't kiss your ring, but I will defer to you.
Sure, sure. If that's what I think that you expect from me, and I reserve the right to change that behavior at any point. But yeah, it's like you make those people happy. It tends to it affects you pretty quickly in a smaller community.
Mhm. And I think that if you have to demand respect, that is kind of back to what I was saying before. And you're probably not one of those people I'm going to give it to
That's
or
a
give
great
give
point.
much of it to if you have to demand it.
And if you're constantly ranting about it, I think you might have a misunderstanding
It's
of
kind of
it.
like those people that talk about drama all the time. Oh, it's so dramatic. Oh, the drama, that drama. I don't like the drama in this. They tend to be the ones that
The first
are
one.
mixed up in the drama.
Yeah.
Anything we should add to this conversation before we go to the next? All right, then let me check to see real quick if we had any questions from the audience. And we did not, so get on that, audience. I see you there. And on to our next little block topic of discussion, which will be pet play. So let's talk a little bit about pet play. I think we have a couple of pet players
I brought my ears today.
just in celebration of the topic of pet
Thank
play.
you. It was very festive.
So, what is it?
Well,
30 seconds, go.
so pet play within the community is a type of play where one person is either has characteristics of some sort of pet that they have determined, or and those are on a spectrum of like super realistic to just kind of like a throwback to an animal-ish behavior. Um, so like on some of the more common ones that I am familiar with are ponies, puppies, and kittens. But I've met a number of people that so I think there's a difference in my opinion between like a furry and a pet player. So in my opinion, like the majority of people who do pet play, we're talking about ponies, puppies, and kittens, and then some people combine them into other
Mhm.
kinds of animals.
Interesting that we have those three, because those are the three that I think are, the most common in our community. Um, Interesting that we've chosen those, and maybe that's a cultural thing, because most of the pony players that I know have had some exposure to horses at some time. You don't grow up
Yeah.
in the city. If you grow up in a city and you end up being a pony, having never met a pony, ridden a pony, cared for a pony, you're probably an anomaly. That it's generally animals that we relate to or that we have some experience with. So we're talking about um, dogs and cats being the most common ones, and horses being up there too. But I think there's also an element to those particular animals, aside from the fact that they have way more personality than goldfish. So we don't have too much goldfish play. They they have way more, let's say personality traits or um, you know what I mean. When we bestow human emotions and traits um, on our pets, like they have personalities, they have desires, they have opinions, and we can identify with that. My cat is a princess, and she likes to be treated this way, and pet, stroked, groomed, etc., treated in a certain way, played with in a certain way. Those are all things that I think a lot of humans can relate to. Of course, when you have dog people, you also have cat. You have cat people and dog people, and they tend to express themselves differently in pet play than you have the ponies. But I think there's something aside from the familiarity with these particular animals. There's also an element of grooming and training with these pets. I mean, you don't have to groom a cat. They do love it when you do that. But you can train cats to a limited extent. But when you're talking about dogs, and they have fucking obedience schools for these. Horses, almost from the get-go, are being, saddled and taught how to, steer and ride and, trots and gaits
Pull.
and yeah, pull. That there is a training inherent in those types of animals that their partners find appealing too. So
Yeah.
if you say, I'm into chinchilla play, I'm a chinchilla, that's what I am. I don't know what to do. Give you water and food and then leave you alone?
Throw
Uh,
dirt on you and let you on the floor.
make a coat out of you? I don't. Um, there. I mean, but if you say that you're a puppy and you're into puppy play, there are 100 million things that I can do with you that are fun as a puppy to put you in your space.
Yeah, and I think those protocols really are a huge part of it, and that's why they matter. That you know what do with them, because it is a type of power exchange, I would say. With a pet play, you typically have a pet and an owner or a trainer or a keeper or a handler or whatever their name for that person is. So yeah, I mean, you do defer to them and you let them feed you, and maybe you stay on the floor, and depending on the kind of pet play that you're engaging in, they teach you tricks and there are consequences for bad behavior, and you know that is uh, those protocols have value because of that, because they reinforce the bottom feeling or the top feeling, which is a good feeling
Hmm.
for people that engage in it,
And
I
then
think.
there's also an element of, caring for something that can't care for itself.
Sure.
Whether it's providing for them the necessities, or I know for ponies, a lot of it is grooming. A lot of folks are really into the grooming aspect. It's a sensation thing. These are all sort of related to kink activities, things that we do in the sort of broader kink community that are just, sort of modified and embodied in these pet play scenarios.
Yeah.
So, you know, a pony pulling a cart with you riding on it, I'm pretty sure the one holding the whip and riding in the cart is the boss of you. So there is a power exchange there that people like, but why do people do this? Like, aside from the power exchange, I mean, what's in it for them? Why would they pick pet play over some other type of DS arrangement or top bottom type play?
That's a great question. I think so. So part of it, at least for me personally, I think is that it allows for there's a certain playfulness involved in invoking these characteristics of the animal that you're going to be. So like I am not a puppy. I I actually I've tried like playing with puppies because I pet play is one of my favorite classes to sit in on. I love hearing people talk about their different kinds of pet play because it's so varied and it's just really interesting to me. But I've always just been kind of kitteny in my nature. I can be imperious sometimes, but I like someone to take care of me. I like being very cuddly. I like playing when I want to and not playing when I don't. It's all these like characteristics that everyone knows of a cat. Like
You like to chew on their toes while they're sleeping, or
basically, yeah, I like to chew on their clothes. I like to be in inconvenient places. Like if they're trying to be on the computer, I'm like on it, just like a cat. And there's a playfulness to doing that. I think it also takes the speech away. Like I don't have to be articulate. I'm just being a kitten, and I don't have to use my words, but I still kind of get to power exchange with somebody. I also feel like I'm getting nurtured, but I don't have to it's not a service based kind of a power exchange. It's being somebody's pet is somehow rewarding in a completely different way from being somebody submissive to me. And it is hard to articulate, but I think a big part of it for me is invoking those characteristics of myself and letting them out and embracing them and exaggerating them because it feels kind of fun to play with those things.
Mhm.
And it feels kind of fun to see that other person respond to them as well, because I know how they respond to me as a bottom or as their submissive. But it's interesting with those people that I feel like I am their submissive, and then sometimes I'm their pet. I do not feel like we have the same relationship when I'm their pet versus their submissive, because the expectations of me are lower. Like
Mhm.
I don't have to be articulate. I don't have to be helpful. I just have to be a kitten.
Mhm. Well, like you were saying, differentiating it from furries, and if you're not sure what a furry is as a viewer, I can't really explain it all right here. Go use Google; it's your friend. But there is a common theme or a common element there with the furry fandom, and that is that when you are into pet play, you generally have a sort of totem or spirit animal, an animal that you really, really relate to. So sometimes you really feel like a puppy, or you really feel like you want to be a puppy, or sometimes you'd rather be a puppy than be a human because adulting is hard. And, when it's a space that people can get into that can be a very peaceful space for them. My first foray into this was with pony play, and the ponies were telling me that, they they have personalities. They don't, um, but they're getting into a space, and part of that is not using their words, and a lot of them are very strict about that. They're not going to talk when they're in their space because it just kind of ruins it for them. Um, they are being looked after, cared for, uh, sometimes forced to work or do service in that way, whether it's pull carts or give rides or whatever it is. There are a lot of, and then they get groomed, and they're just in a peaceful place. It's kind of like, you know, maybe not unlike a little's space where the expectations of you are lower in that, these things are provided to you, and everything kind of centers on you. You can do your thing and be in a peaceful place where you don't have to you don't have to be yourself for a while. You can go be something else and go escape to a place that's a little more comfortable, at least for a little while. And sometimes that's reveling in your little, sometimes that's becoming a horse or a kitten or a puppy.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think that also goes for the person who's taking care, the caretaker of that pet at that time, because I mean, it sounds corny to say it, but I swear to you, like if you go to a leather event and there is a puppy mosh and there are a bunch of puppies around, the look on the people's faces, it's the same as when you go to the pound and like, the people that go there to pet the dogs for fun, they're just like, de-stressing, they're playing the games, they're doing all of that. It's kind of hilarious because people get into it. There's all these puppies running around and they may have them on a mask or a tail or whatever, and they're playing fetch. And all these strangers are playing fetch with these puppies, and they're like laughing, and they start talking to that human pet as like a dog, like, go get it, are you gonna go get it? And you can kind of see them sometimes catch themselves like, what is happening
Yeah.
right now? But they experienced happiness in that moment, and it was fun and it was playful. And I think maybe you can speak to that too, but I think the caretaker topside person in that exchange also gets this kind of like, I don't have to talk to you either. I don't have to take care of you like emotionally like a submissive right now. I get to take care of you like a cat or like a dog. And isn't that nice?
On
I'm
my
just
lap,
petting
and
your
I will
head.
pet you. We will watch Game of Thrones, and you will be quiet while
Yeah,
I
that
pet
sounds
your
great.
hair.
It's like
Right.
it has value for like the top side and the bottom side. And it sounds so unusual to say it out loud, but like you feel it. It's so soothing.
Well, and I do, there are these programs for disabled folks, elderly folks, disadvantaged youths, for instance, where they take all these like animal shelter, puppies and kitties, and they're just like here, and they put them on your lap, and there's it's smiles, it's happiness, it's low blood pressure, it's like all these good things happen when you have this animal that you're caring for, this animal just to cuddle with, just some intimacy, some sensory, fluffy fun. Good things happen to people. And when I'm sort of in owner mode for a pet, I guess, I think I do get some of those same things out of it. It's soothing to me. It's I bet you my blood pressure does go down. I bet you I smile a little bit more. Um, and who doesn't want that, really? Healthy and happy.
Yeah. And I
Now,
think it builds your relationship too. I mean, you learn these things together, same as any new pet. So like when you're learning to be somebody's pet or when you're encountering a pet for the first time, it's kind of a fun, I think it's fun. I'm sure some people think it's frustrating, but I think it's fun to encounter that and to figure out like what's a fun activities you can do together versus activities that you don't really like.
mhm. Well, let's talk a little bit about sort of the levels here, because I think people have the mis uh, there's some misinformation out there, or the mistaken idea that you're sort of all in or you're all out. So you are either literally a kitten in your mind, or you are a person. And there's a lot of gray area in between. And some people like, just like Little's play, for instance, you have some people that have interests and activities that they like doing that are considered little. But they're not, it's not like an age regression, for instance. And there are some ponies that I've known that they're more comfortable in their space when they are actually treated like a horse. So one of the guys that I excuse me, he was at a every now and then, I think a couple times a year, he had this mistress, and he would go and live on her farm. And he was put in the stable. I think she may have had other horses there. He was put in the stable with the horses, and he slept on the straw, and he ate the oats, and the carrots and M&Ms that she would feed him, and all the stuff that horses like. And he probably didn't utter a word all weekend. He was taken out, he was groomed, he was trained, he was run, and all these things. And it was like the greatest thing. It was the best 3-day vacation that he could ever have, where he could just go and realign, reset, like total attitude adjustment, happiness. And he loved it. But he had to be really deep into that space, where you really had to treat him like a horse. And that means no sex. And that means, which I think he was also kind of into denial a little bit, so that was okay with him. So, and you wouldn't, you might whip a horse, hit them with a crop or something like that, but you don't beat your horse either, unless you're an asshole pet owner. So those things would have brought him out of that space, and he really enjoyed being very deep into that. But I don't want anybody to think that those are the lengths that you have to go to have good pet play that's fruitful for you and your partner. So Josie, you're wearing your ears right now. Are you a kitten?
Yes.
100%. You're talking, so you're not meowing. I'm saying, like, ears are fun, and I like ears. I like the little ear. I think they're sexy. There's something about it that's sexy for me, sort of like the kitten girl thing. But you can choose how much kitten you want to let out and what's appropriate for your surroundings. And for some people, they're into pet play, but they're reluctant to call it that, because what they really want isn't necessarily to be treated like a puppy or a kitty. What they want is to be treated like a human with more puppy or kitty attributes.
Right.
So they don't want to use pee pads in the house or a litter box, okay? They want to use the bathroom. You know what? I'm glad about it. I would rather they, so you don't have to go all in order to have pet play. You can have fun aspects of your personality or different parts of, your leisure play, where you're just hanging out talking, but you might have a little stick with a feather on it that they get to bat at while you're doing it. What
Yeah.
are what are some of your thoughts about it? How do you moderate that, or where do you find that you bring out more or pull back a little bit? What works for you?
So that's one of the things I also really like about this is that like you can break into it at any point. Like I to be a kitten, I do not have to be wearing my ears. That's one of my things. I can just start chewing on your shoelaces and not explain myself, and I think it becomes self-explanatory that I am at this moment being a kitten and not my normal self. And I think that's fun to do. So me personally, I think that normal kitten play for me is like I like to play with toys, like cat toys from the pet store. Like I have gone to the pet store before and been like, yes, I will take this, and those are my toys, and we're going home to play with them. And I'll bat a ball across the floor, and I like putting a bowl on the floor and licking things out of it, or having like a little plate that has food on it, not cat food. I'm not that hardcore. Like actual food. I like cat treats that are known by most people as gummy bears
Snickers?
and or Sour Patch Kids or Snickers, small candies that my people can put in their pockets that I can be cute and earn. I'll roll around, I'll be playful. I think that so like getting into pet play, I have learned like I had to learn about the bowl on the floor thing because at first I was like, no, that just feels like a little bit humiliating. And when you have an actual cat, it's like super fucks with your head because like your cat bowl's on the floor and then your cat will drink out of it and you're like, whoa, like a boundary there just got kind of weird. But I think exploring it is really fun. So like I had to learn about the bowl on the floor thing. Like first I put my drink in a bowl, but I put the bowl on the table. And then I was like, all right, I'll try it. I'm gonna get on the floor. I'm gonna try it. And I like put it on the seat of the chair, and then I put it on the floor. Or like I think it can be super hot. It sounds weird to like sexualize your pet play, but let's be real, a lot of people do. I personally have done it. I think it's really hot for someone to take you outside and make you pee outside. I wouldn't want to all the time. There's like a kind of slightly humiliating aspect of it that could be interesting, or like a power exchange that is very, very real in that moment. But most of the time, that's not where my head is unless I'm like all the way there. Usually, like I get up and use the bathroom. I'll start talking to you. I don't completely lose my speech. I just get quieter.
Hmm.
Um,
But your surroundings probably dictate some of that too. You can't go out into your backyard and, you know, you were talking about like peeing outside. That might be like fun or hot or something in a particular circumstance, but probably while you're out camping or something,
I
not.
think a lot of people do it in their backyards if they have a fenced-in yard. I
Yeah,
mean,
if
if
they
you
have
don't
some
have a
kind of.
fenced-in yard, that's kind of weird. You're non-consensually involving your neighbors, maybe. That's a bad shame on you. But yeah, I mean, if you're not, if no one else is around and it's your fenced-in backyard and that's what you want to do, I think that can be fun. But that's more like I have to be in a really special place for that to be what's happening.
Mhm. Well, and some people feel, you're saying that you can be a kitten anywhere. You don't need your ears to do that. You don't need a tail. You don't need a collar or any of that stuff. And I think that that's true for a lot of BDSM play, or power exchange. You don't have to have the tools of the trade around in order to have a good scene or to reinforce your power dynamic with somebody. Some folks really like that a lot. That's a thing, with the puppy snout, the ears, the collar, and not having clothes or having tails, things like that. Those are the things that you know when they're going all out. Those are the things that they like to have. Not that it's required in order for them to be a puppy, kitty, pony. You don't need the. But I know some of the ponies that I've known, the tack, the bridle, all of the stuff that they wear, the process of putting it on is part of their transformation into a different kind of space. So it's
Yeah.
like, putting a collar on somebody before you play with them, for instance. It can be used to full effect, but I also, as we're talking about this, I was saying I don't want people to think you have to be all or nothing with this to enjoy good pet play. You don't need a lot of shit to enjoy good pet play either. You don't need a bowl and a collar and a cat toy. Now you can go down to the dollar store and load up for $10, okay? The cost of entry is pretty low. Maybe a little more for pony play, but less for puppies and kitties.
Right.
Squeaky toys are all over the place and they're cheap. Um, you know, but it doesn't have to be that way. It can just be a power exchange. A You can just be that way around each other.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's hard to get comfortable with it. I think you have to get out of your head about it. For people when you're first getting started, I think that some people feel stupid doing it, like barking or, wagging their non-existent tail or whatever it is that they're doing. But I feel very strongly it is like a way that I am. It's a way of being is one of the aspects of pet play for sure. It is that playfulness really matters, or that like every puppy that I've ever met has always been like as a puppy frisky and playful and jumpy and like silly. Like a lot of the puppies that I have been around, and whether they're dressed or not doesn't really matter.
Hmm.
But I will say like about the dress, it I think it helps a lot. It's like before you go to a party. I would not go without my lipstick on. I would feel weird if I didn't put my face on. Like that's what I do. It's part of my process. So for pet play, it's kind of the same thing. Like I have a bell. I typically wear my bell a lot of the time so that if I happen to want to break into pet play at any point, I feel like I have an accessory and I can do that. But like, your tail makes you feel like more of a kitten, or it makes you feel pretty because as a cat, you want to have a tail, or you want to have your collar because it really puts you in that space and it makes you feel cute.
Hmm.
Feeling, you know, when you're a cat, you want to feel cute, you know, because you're like a human cat. You're not
I
like
don't
a regular
know.
cat.
I think that might just be you.
No, there is a whole, if you've ever been on Tumblr, then you know there is a huge community of people that just go nuts over their cat accessories. But yeah, I like an accessory. Let's be real. I like an accessory
Mhm.
in all phases of my life, but especially as a cat.
Right. So it can be helpful that way, but I think that tell me a little bit, at least from your end of things, as a pet. Is there something also about being sort of disregarded, for instance? You know, a pet isn't something, you think of your common house pet, that they're there when you call them or when they need something or want, they climb into bed with you or something like that. But there are times that you go about your day cooking dinner and, you're shooing them out of the kitchen, get the fuck out of here, or they're just having a nap on the floor and you're reading a book and you're not even really, you know what I mean? It's not like the intensity of attention that you lavish on somebody, or when you're coupled up as humans, where you're there, they're there, you're supposed to be kind of paying attention to each other. It gives people license to relax that a little bit, and from the submissive side, maybe be okay with being sort of stepped over on the way to the bathroom.
Yeah, I think that's totally part of it. Absolutely part of it. It's funny. Someone was telling me that the other day. I go over to her house sometimes, and she was saying, I really love having you around. It's like having a house cat, because I find my spot on the couch, and then I like get into it, and then I don't really say anything. And periodically, she might like ask me if I want a drink or like come by and like give me a pet. But typically, we're just kind of alone together, and that's nice for her. Like she likes that she doesn't have to talk to me, and I kind of like that she acts like I'm not there. You kind of blend into the scenery, but you are there and you are alone together. And there is something kind of nice, like, if it's another kind of creative way that you can put your play into your life too. Like maybe you have some work you need to do on your computer and you want to, like, I'm there with you, but you really just can't feel
Yeah.
the pressure of needing me to be around you. So I just kind of sit down at your feet and curl up and do my whatever, and it's
It's
like
one
I'm
of
right
my
there.
That's one of my favorite things about pet play
Yeah,
is
mine
that
too.
being
Absolutely.
there and not having to talk or you don't need to interact with me. We're just here together. There's
Yep.
no pressure.
Pet me every once in a while, but don't really acknowledge me a whole lot. Absolutely. I think that's a really big part of it.
And do feed and water them.
Yeah, so like don't neglect your pet.
I feel like it is kind of it's a buzzkill sometimes for somebody in that nice comfy space to be like, okay, I'm really thirsty. I'm just gonna say that now. Like, it's been 4 hours that I've been here and you've not put anything in front of me to drink. It's nice if you can anticipate those things, that they can stay in their space, you
It
know.
is, but it's also nice sometimes like that if that's not happening, I can come over and like chew on your leg a little bit like, "Hey, hey, pay attention to me," because that's what a cat would do, and then you get what you wanted, and that's kind of cool. I didn't even have to use my words. Like it's kind of precious. Like I don't know how another word, another way to explain it. It's very similar to the way that littles interact. For people that have a hard time understanding it, it's pretty similar to that kind of a dynamic. But yeah, I like being able to like start bothering you and have you realize, oh, I didn't feed her. I should
Mom,
maybe feed her.
mom, mom.
Yeah, yeah. Start clawing up your furniture. Like,
Yeah, or pissing in places you shouldn't.
no, just stand up and knock your coffee cup off the table. Like, hey,
Like those Facebook memes, and they're like, "Fuck your coffee cup."
yeah, exactly. I do what I want. Basically, that's what it is.
Are there bratty pets out there? I haven't known any, like, specifically, but are there people that,
Oh, I think
this,
there's so many puppies who are like that.
this is a brat vehicle,
Yeah, I think some people are pets to be a pain in the ass. A lovable pain in the ass. But
or gives them license to be a pain in the ass, where they get swatted with a
Um,
newspaper and
there's
spun
a
over the way?
lot of cats who are very bratty. Cats are those kind of people that, or they're those kind of pets that you're are always like, hey, fuck you. I don't want you to hold me. I'm going to claw you.
I'll
Like,
do what I
you
want.
know,
We're playing until suddenly we're not.
cats are like, hey, you're my human. I'm not your pet. Like, so it's fun to sometimes get in that mode where you're like, oh, yeah, I want you to pet me, but I want to bite you at the same time. Like, you
Yeah.
know, that's totally a cat. It's totally a cat-like thing to do. Oh, yes, rub my belly, and then they get their back legs going and they scratch you, you know? It's kind of just, that's a cat thing. So, yeah, totally.
Yeah,
Brattiness
and it's
totally plays into
forgivable because if you were a human doing that to me, you might get a slap. But if you were a kitten doing that to me, I'd probably get a laugh out of it.
Right. That's a really good distinction
exactly.
too. You can get away with that kind of behavior. And it can be fun too, like if you're the kind of cat who's not supposed to be on the furniture and you get on the furniture, like your person can come by and give you a little snack. Like typically you're totally allowed to be on the couch, but if you're a cat, you're not. And they get to turn those tables too. And normally I wouldn't respond very well to you just walking about and like shoving me off the couch, but
Yeah.
as a pet, that's a fun part of the way you can play.
And human kittens don't shed very much, neither do human puppies.
No, it's pro. That's a pro of the
Yes.
type of
Yeah,
play.
definitely a good thing. So what, I mean, we can start wrapping it up here. I want to put it out there for either some of the folks in the audience to submit some questions or some comments, or, for the other panelists here to tell us a little bit about their play. I mean, we talked a little bit about what you get out of it, what do you enjoy. What are some of the areas that we're missing? The stuff that doesn't get said, or particular good stories or particular instances where pet play was like the exact right thing at the right time. Do you have anything like that, or areas of discussion that we should get into before we sew it up?
I mean, we talked about it being like one of those things that reduces anxiety.
hmm
Um,
Let's talk about pets with other pets. So how do puppies and kitties get along?
Oh, I have a really fun one for that one. So most people know what IML is, International Mr. Leather. Well, they have it in Chicago sometimes at the huge hotel. You know, all the gays and the leathers get together and come out to it, and they celebrate the exchange or the achievement of International Mr. Leather. Well, you always see like thousands of dogs. Like it is dog central and puppy central, and they have like a puppy get together, and it's amazing and awesome. And it's funny because you don't see cats very often because there are a lot of dogs around. So I'm a cat. I'm fully in my gear, my tail, my ears, my claws, the whole shebang. Well, then there's this dog crawling around on the floor. So I get down there and you're playing together, and it's like the typical, cat dog exchange. It's kind of like sniffing each other and the cat's like hissing or whatever. And it's really, really freaking cute. And then sometimes if they're really young, they'll take to each other and like play. So that's that's kind of like how it happened for us is he stole my toy, then I went over and was trying to take it back. So I think it's fun. It can be really fun, and you can still have the play where a cat totally will like claw up a puppy. So it's fun. It can go a whole bunch of different ways.
hmm Yeah, and I think cats like to play with each other, and puppies, of course. That's some of the most fun that they have is at these mosh parties where there's
Yes.
a pit and a bunch of puppies in there, and they're onlookers and owners and trainers and stuff sort of looking on, and they're just playing with other puppies like other puppies do. So I think that's one of the things that if this is some kind of play style that you're into or something that you're interested in, maybe it's even better, or at least you should try it sometime, mixing it up with other pet people, whatever their pet is, puppy pony, kitty pony, whatever, puppy kitty, um, chinchilla goldfish, whatever, whatever people are. I think it could probably add a new dynamic, and you might find even that your puppy prefers to play with other puppy, like that is when they want to be in puppy mode is with other puppies, not necessarily even with you. That um, they want to be. I know that some of the ponies that I know, they like to run wild together, and they act like ponies. And actually, sex in that case seems to be a little bit more appropriate because that's what ponies do when they're out in the pasture together. So you might have some fun with that, mixing it up with other people with those interests, because you might find another dimension to it, or you might find, sort of even a preferred setting for letting their pet out. Um, I enjoy pet play, to a mild extent. It's very rarely something that we decide that we're going to do. It just kind of happens, and it usually happens in sort of moderate amounts. I enjoy it when it happens. But again, I like light pet play, really. If you want to put on your paws and your snout and whatever, and that helps you be a puppy, that's great. I'm not requiring it, I'm not, and I don't want to get to a point where I can't use my words if I need to, or that, we have to have a litter box for you or something like that. I like to go kind of halfway in. That's my comfort zone. That's where I like it best. But finding that little place in that spectrum is probably one of the things that you're going to have to do when you decide to get into this, is where your comfort zone is, and hopefully you and your partner sort of align on that.
And Michael, like you're saying, from your side of it, as a pet owner or a pet person, there's also a lot of fun things that they can do involving animals. Like in Georgia, when I used to live there, I had an animal daycare, where owners, I would spend maybe like a Saturday day, and I would set up the backyard and, have different things in the house. And when I had this space, and owners would bring their pets over to stay, and I would take care of them. And so there's a lot of things that can be really, really fun for the person who likes pet people, who really enjoys like taking care of them or pampering them. So there are options like that as well for the other side, which is really, really fun.
Excellent. All right, I think we'll wrap it up there. Thank you to the panel. Thank you to the viewership tonight. Another good episode. We'll be back a couple of weeks. Yeah, it looks like May 12th. May 12th. We will be back with a couple of topics. That's it. Signing off.